All right, crypto payments could be exploding, and today we're going to dive in deep. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. Today there's a lot of moves in the marketplace right now around a company called Stripe. You probably have seen them come up, much like Plaid and other fintech companies that basically collect information to either one, do a credit card transaction for a website or an e-commerce site. Stripe is one of the leading companies out there. In fact, we use Stripe for some of our own transactions, but they are one of the leading companies out there, and they kind of dropped a bombshell in essence to be moving back into crypto payments. And I want to talk quickly about the story. This, of course, came over from CoinDesk, and it really outlines Stripe is hiring a new crypto team 3 years after ending Bitcoin support. There is a little bit around this that's kind of interesting. I want to kind of just zoom in on a couple of things around the topic itself. The engineers basically will be designing and building the core components that will need support to support crypto use cases. That's basically what the job post said. Stripe's relatively modest hiring push. This is has it at 4,000 employees, comes in amid a surge in crypto payments integrations across online retailers and also social media platforms. Strike, which is Mahler's company, also the guy who implemented the wallet system in El Salvador. Strike is a very similar type of company. Stripe, no pun intended, has a very unique position, mainly because it has been the de facto credit card acceptance for most of the e-commerce evolution that's happened over the last 5 years. So Stripe is definitely a big titan in terms of a player. The team may be new, and this was another quote here, it may be new in Stripe's interest in crypto, but it does stretch back several years. Payments giant, whose API supports millions of global storefronts, made its headlines in 2014 when it actually supported Bitcoin, and then they abandoned it for a short while, even though that they did have some people on staff that said, hey, wait a minute, we had not abandoned it, we had just kind of moved away from it. Where this means in terms of movement in the marketplace, and this is kind of the thing that I always watch for on not only crypto, but just traditionally in Bitcoin and Ethereum, some of the big blue chips, is that when you have major companies like Stripe, PayPal, Square, etc., Stripe is actually the more dominant player here, even more so than PayPal, more so than Square, in terms of the number of merchant accounts that it affects. The other thing that goes into this is the potential for it to roll over into some banking systems to be able to enable crypto payments, which most likely will use some of the traditional coins and tokens that we're all used to using, including, and probably not withholding, Bitcoin in the array of what could be rolling through Stripe's new feature, which is going to basically attack things like BitPay and some of those kind of companies. If we start to see Stripe moving in this direction, this could be a huge avalanche effect. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about where all this is pushing, in general, the crypto market. So here's a quick story. Crypto funds double weekly inflows to 226 million as basically that word means happiness returns to Bitcoin market. Let me kind of just look at a couple of things here, which I thought was interesting. One is the Gensler effect, and this is something that is kind of interesting, and I'm going to just highlight this. The Ethereum-focused funds, which had gained in recent months as Bitcoin funds most likely flat to down, saw minor outflows last week totaling 14 million. So focused funds, alternative blockchains like Coin, Ripple, Polkadot, also saw outflows last week. But the authors of this report saw the uptick in Bitcoin flows to recent statements by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Chairman, Gary Gensler, who was basically hinting that the regulatory agency might be willing to approve an exchange-traded fund linked to Bitcoin futures. Now, this again is something we've talked about here on the show in a recent episode, but the point is that you've got these massive moves of inflows coming into crypto in general, and mainly why we're seeing so much activity in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, of course, trailing in at the 56 to 58K this week. We anticipate we could see another higher push before we see a little bit of a pullback. And that's one thing I want you guys to be watching for, because there are going to be some pullbacks that will be sliding in there. And we'll talk about that in a second. I want to talk about this story, Bitcoin eyeing 60K as active entity surge. Price chart shows impending bull cross. This is kind of interesting that they're talking about where this potentially could happen in terms of the EMAs and the SMAs starting to really show some interesting positioning. Bitcoin has gained 30%. I want to just highlight some of this right here. Bitcoin has gained 30% this month. User activity on the network. This is something that we also noted in some recent data that we were tracking in the sentiment pools, where we saw early or late acquired wallets increasing dramatically in the sentiment pools. And I'll explain how that works here in a second when we look at the Bitcoin chart. User activity on the network, as measured by a 7-day average of the number of active entities, has increased 19%. This is 200, almost 300,000, according to the data provided by Glassnode. An increase in network adoption along with price increase is said to confirm the uptrend. This is also giving us really good upward trends. So when you look back at what's happening with not only Square and also Twitter implementing tipping, you now have Stripe in the game of going back into a full boat developer group, and that's going to be a huge issue in being able to take this market to the next level. So another point on this that I wanted to talk about is a more active market participants has historically correlated with a growing interest in assets during early stage bull markets. So what that simply means is right now, when you look back at 2017, and there's a lot of similarities between 2017 and also what we're seeing right now, including down to the month, if not even the day, of when some of this bull run has been starting to indicate potential highs. Now, one thing to watch out for, if you just go back and look at the 17 chart, you'll notice that there was a little bit of a dip in November, and I think that's going to be the correction that we'll most likely see, very similar to what we're seeing here before we saw parabolic moves. So again, Stripe, Strike, also with what we're seeing with Square, and also Twitter, and even Visa when they've started talking about getting more into the NFT. What's happening is you've got a bigger group of payment systems that are really moving into this direction. And I think that will drag the banking side of it in, and that is really where we're talking about movement. Last point was Glassnode defines active user clusters, addresses controlled by the same network entity. The metrics included both businesses like exchange and custodians and individuals. So that's going to get you across the full network of where some of this is going. So all of that being said, what it simply means is what you've probably seen us talk about here on this Bitcoin chart. And I want to just kind of track back through it, because crypto payments, I believe, are going to have the most effect on Bitcoin more so than anything. And if you look at where, in general, what we've seen around sentiment with Bitcoin all the way back here to, gosh, let's go back to August 23rd, where we saw the 74.51 and the 73 amp. That showed a little bit of a flat line, but a definite potential to get to a new short-term high, which it did, which was right at 52. Then we saw the amplification drop a little bit, as well as sentiment move down. That gave us a little bit of a downward trend. That moved us into this new sentiment zone, which was right here on the September 18th. And that started to move things a little differently. And then your last one, which is the one we just pulled here this week, this one, of course, came in on September 27th, and we popped that one out on the 29th. That's a sentiment score now of 75.93 with a amplification that is above the sentiment number. And again, that is moving back to the chart, really in terms of our trajectory and our prediction, which we map out in advance. We actually think this is where it's going to land. We still have a high at 62.3. The question is this zone right here that I've talked about before, which looks like could be somewhere around October 16th or a little bit after, depending on the money flow. And of course, there's a lot of activity in Market Cipher. If you have not been watching the money flow, it's a little bit down right now, where we are seeing the activity starting to trend down. So it could definitely come in to this zone right here, which is this fat zone, which could be the correction in October, that whether it goes down to 52, 53, or if you look at where that base is, we're right there at 48. That would be the low of where we see this going. So opportunities here definitely for another potential dip in the market, whether we see it in October or we see one further out in November. We won't be able to tell that until we see some more data coming in on this. But the point being is that you've got all these companies, including Stripe, moving in this right direction around crypto payments. Again, this just is a big, great news day in general around what we're seeing in the crypto markets. Obviously, this doesn't have effect immediately in the altcoins, but there are some things that are going to be moving quickly in the altcoins that I want you guys to kind of track, because altcoins, when you go look at the Bitcoin dominance as well as the total market values of alts minus Bitcoin, you start to see some very interesting things. I'm going to do a video specifically on this to show you guys a little bit more about it. So make sure and check out the comments or check out some of our content as we start flowing that out there. Make sure and hit us up in the comments below if you have some topics that you want us to address. Remember, these are market movers that we'll put together both stories, we'll put together some data analysis like what we're looking at, and we're tracking Bitcoin very closely, but it is not financial advice. The number one thing that this is designed to do is get you moving in the right direction, get your education moving in the right direction, helping you understand what are the driving factors and forces behind some of these things that can really move the markets, because that's what's going to affect your investment over short term. Another thing you want to do is make sure and join our Diamond Circle. And the reason behind that is very simple. It's free to you. It's free. And the cool things that you're going to get with the Diamond Circle is, one, you're going to get some custom content and analysis. That'll be free to you, our members. And you'll also have access to some of our advanced courses, which will be huge discounts. If you guys are a member, you'll be able to get to that. But the best thing that the Diamond Circle is going to bring is digital asset rewards back to our member base. And that's everything from token values, IDOs, as well as NFTs. We're going to be coming up with some really creative ways to thank you, our members, for helping support this channel. And that's the number one thing we want to do to our community, the Diamond Circle. Very, very easy to join. Just your name. We do need your phone number so we can contact you to actually award you some NFT and or some digital asset rewards, which, by the way, we're doing a reward delivery this Friday during a live stream. So October 15th, be ready to look out for that one. We'll do it at 3 o'clock. So make sure and stay tuned right here for that. If you want to reach me, you can hit me up on Twitter. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.